Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to imagine a really specific, but, probably an incredibly familiar scenario.
Oh, I think we all have one of these ready to go.
Right, so you are sitting at a dinner table, or maybe you're, I don't know, trapped in the corner of a coffee shop, or just staring blankly at your phone screen.
The dreaded endless phone call.
Exactly. And across from you, or on the other end of the line, is someone who has been talking for exactly 42 minutes.
42 unbroken minutes.
Yes, and they are detailing the absolute minutiae of their latest workplace drama. Or they're dissecting a relationship problem they have, frankly, zero intention of fixing.
Right, they just want to vent.
Yeah, and you have nodded. You have made all the sympathetic little noises. But they haven't asked you a single question about your life.
Not one.
Not one. And as you sit there, you start feeling this dull, heavy ache behind your eyes.
Oh, I know that ache.
And then this incredibly dark but clarifying mathematical equation just flashes in your mind.
What is it?
You suddenly realize, I am paying for this 42-minute monologue with a non-refundable percentage of my remaining lifespan.
Wow. Yeah. It's a chilling moment of clarity, isn't it?
It really is.
It's when the veil drops. You suddenly stop seeing the interaction as just, a mildly annoying conversation.
Right.
And you start seeing it as a literal hemorrhage of your existence.
It is entirely chilling. Because usually when we talk about a depleted resource, we naturally think in terms of a bank account.
Sure, money.
Yeah, money. You spend some money, your balance drops, you feel a little pinch of anxiety.
But you can always make more.
Exactly. There's
Yeah.
always this comforting, underlying expectation of recovery. You can work a little harder next month.
Pick up a side hustle.
Right. Sell something on the internet.
Yeah.
The money comes back. It's a cyclical, renewable system.
But then you look at time.
Yes. You look at time.
Yeah.
And that cycle is fundamentally mathematically broken. The money comes back, but that Tuesday afternoon you just spent listening to that person complain never ever comes back.
Never. And that realization is the exact threshold we are crossing today for this deep dive.
Okay, so let's set the mission here.
Right. We aren't looking at this through the lens of calendar management. We aren't here to offer life hacks on how to squeeze an extra 15 minutes out of your morning routine to answer more emails.
No productivity hacks today?
Exactly. No hacks. We are engaging in an existential exploration of boundaries, of self-worth, and of the ultimate inescapable reality of the ticking clock.
The ticking clock.
Yeah. We have to establish a foundational premise right here, right now, before we go any further.
Here's the premise.
Giving your time to those who do not recognize its absolute finite worth isn't participating in a relationship.
Okay.
It is allowing a consumption of the self.
A consumption of the self. Man, that hits incredibly hard.
It's heavy.
It is heavy. And to you, listening to us right now, I want to say this directly. Whether you are a constantly busy professional who feels like your entire schedule just belongs to other people.
Which is so common.
So common. Or maybe you're the dedicated friend who is always the one showing up. You're always the one doing the emotional heavy lifting.
The rock of the group.
Yeah, the rock. Or maybe you're just someone walking around feeling inexplicably deeply burnt out for reasons you can't even articulate.
You just feel exhausted.
Right. If that's you, you likely feel this invisible drain in your bones. You feel the crushing weight of misallocated time, even if you haven't really had the vocabulary to describe what's actually happening to you.
Exactly. It's a universal friction, and it's largely because we are culturally conditioned to treat time as an infinite atmospheric condition.
Like the weather.
Like the air we breathe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We treat it as if it's just this invisible ether that surrounds us, constantly replenishing itself without any effort on our part.
But it doesn't replenish.
No, it doesn't. And to truly engage in what psychologists and philosophers call the mindful engineering of your life, you have to initiate a radical paradigm shift.
Mindful engineering. I love that.
Yeah, you have to stop treating time like oxygen and start treating it as a strictly finite, unrenewable, highly combustible fuel source.
Okay, a fuel source.
Right, because when we misallocate this fuel, when we let people siphon it out of our tanks without our conscious permission, the engine of our own life stalls out.
We literally run out of gas for our own existence.
Exactly.
Okay, but before we can even begin to evaluate who gets our time or how we engineer those boundaries you mentioned, we really need to establish exactly what it is we are giving away.
The nature of time itself.
Right, the metaphysics and the physics of time. And looking back through the source material, different cultures have developed this incredibly rich, terrifyingly accurate vocabulary of the clock.
They really have.
We aren't just talking about minutes and hours ticking away on an Apple Watch. There are ancient concepts that frame this perfectly. I want to start with this immensely powerful Sanskrit word I was reading about.
Kala. Oh, Kala is a phenomenal place to start.
Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. So in ancient Hindu philosophy, Kala isn't just a measurement of how long it takes the sun to cross the sky.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. Kala is conceptualized as the ultimate cosmic force of both creation and destruction.
Creation and destruction.
Yeah. It represents the relentless, unstoppable forward motion of existence itself.
It's almost treated as a deity, right? The devourer of all things.
Exactly. It is the great consumer. But what's practically fascinating here for our modern lives is the behavioral implication of Kala.
Which is what?
Kala does not negotiate. It has no pity. It doesn't pause because you are feeling overwhelmed at work.
It doesn't care.
It really doesn't. It doesn't freeze in place while you endlessly debate in your head whether you finally have the courage to set a boundary with a toxic friend.
Whoa, yeah.
It is the pure physical embodiment of forward momentum. Every single second you spend agonizing in inaction, Kala is actively devouring that second.
Turning the present into the unchangeable past.
Ex-
That is deeply intimidating. But it is the truest thing in the world. The clock does not care about your emotional state.
Not at all.
And that pairs so perfectly with a Latin phrase from our deep dive today that I think a lot of people have heard, but maybe we've reduced it to a cliche. We haven't fully absorbed its actual dread, tempus fugit.
Translating directly to time flees, or the more common vernacular, time flies.
Right. But time flies sounds almost whimsical, like a little bird fluttering by.
Yeah, it sounds light.
But time flees captures the real urgency. It's escaping from you. It's actively running away.
Running away. Yeah.
And you see this inscribed on literal clocks, especially those intricate antique 17th and 18th century mantle clocks.
The really ornate ones.
Yeah, you look up from your armchair to check if you are late for a meeting, and the clock isn't just telling you it's 3 p.m. The literal face of the clock is practically screaming at you in Latin, time is fleeing.
It's an aggressive design choice.
It really is. The makers of those clocks intentionally designed them as a memento mori, a reminder of death.
Sitting right there on the mantelpiece.
Exactly, sitting right there in the middle of a comfortable living room. It was an aesthetic choice to enforce the absolute finality of passing moments.
It was a philosophical technology. It was designed to disrupt your complacency. The ticking was meant to be the audible sound of your life ending, drop by drop.
Drop by drop, that is dark.
It is. And that brings us perfectly to a third term from the sources, which I think is perhaps the most visceral of all.
Okay, what is it?
Well, it takes this vast, abstract, cosmic concept of Kala and this mechanical concept of tempus fugit, and it brings the reality of time right down into the human body.
Into our biology.
Right, into our biology. And that is another Sanskrit word, prana.
Prana, meaning the vital life force, the breath.
The breath, precisely. In Eastern philosophy and ancient medical traditions, prana is the energetic currency of being alive.
Energetic currency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the life force that animates the physical body. Now, if we translate that into our modern context of social dynamics and boundaries, the implications are staggering.
How so?
When you agree to give someone an hour of your time, you are not just dragging a colored block across your Google Calendar.
Right, you're not just organizing your afternoon.
No, you are literally transferring your prana. You are opening up a vein and giving them your finite biological life energy.
Opening up a vein.
Wow. Every single minute you sit there, silently absorbing the negativity of someone who never once asks about your well-being, you are physiologically exhaling your prana into their life.
You are subsidizing their existence.
Yes. You are metabolizing your own cellular energy, your own limited heartbeats, to subsidize them.
That completely shatters the casual way we talk about spending time. You aren't spending time, you are spending breath. You're spending heartbeats.
It's a biological transaction.
Let me throw a mechanical analogy at this, pulling from that mindful engineering theme you mentioned earlier. Think about the physical concept of a one-way valve in plumbing, or in cardiovascular anatomy.
Okay, a one-way valve.
Yeah. A one-way valve is engineered to permit flow in only a single absolute direction. The pressure pushes the fluid through, and then the valve just snaps shut.
Preventing any backflow.
Exactly, preventing any physical possibility of reversal or recovery.
The human heart relies entirely on one-way valves to keep us alive. If the blood flows backward, the system fails.
Yes. And human existence is essentially tethered to a temporal one-way valve. Let's go back to that Tuesday afternoon you spend with someone who completely drains you.
The 42-minute monologue.
Right. The minute you live that afternoon, it passes to the one-way valve of time. It snaps shut behind it.
It's gone.
That Tuesday is now permanently archived in the universe. It is completely mathematically inaccessible to you for the rest of eternity.
You can never get it back.
Never. You can never go back and spend it reading a book or sleeping or just being with someone you actually love. You have literally walked up to the counter of the universe and paid for that miserable Tuesday afternoon with the non-refundable fraction of your lifespan.
That is a staggering way to visualize it, because it forces you to acknowledge the physics of the transaction.
It really does.
It shifts a social interaction from this casual, fluid activity into a permanent, hardened historical record.
Right.
And if we want to talk about biology and physics, the neurology actually backs up the immense, terrifying weight of this one-way valve transaction.
Oh, this part of the research completely blew my mind.
It's wild, isn't it?
I actually had to put my notes down and walk around the room for a minute when I read this.
It is deeply unsettling the first time you encounter it, because it brings up a startling physiological reality about how human beings perceive this valve as we age.
Time doesn't just pass evenly.
No, our internal experience of its speed fundamentally alters. Neurologically speaking, the subjective experience of time dramatically accelerates as we get older.
The years actually feel shorter.
They do. And neuroscientists have a very clear mechanical explanation for this. It has to do with how the brain processes novel images and encodes memory.
Okay, break that down for us.
When you are a young child, the world is radically new. Your brain is encountering constant novelty. The physical texture of a new food, the spatial layout of a new classroom.
The complex rules of a new playground game.
Exactly. To make sense of the world, your brain has to record highly dense, incredibly detailed memory networks.
Taking in all that new data.
Right. This massive cognitive processing takes energy and focus. And because the brain is recording so much data, a single summer month feels like an absolute eternity.
Oh, I remember being 10 years old, and the gap between June and August felt like an entire lifetime.
It did.
You could fit entire eras of civilization into one summer vacation.
Exactly, because your brain was furiously encoding new data. But as you transition into adulthood, routine takes over.
Right, the routine.
You drive the exact same commute to work every day, you sit at the exact same desk, you perform the exact same tasks.
You interact with the same people in the same predictable patterns.
Right. And because the brain is an efficiency machine, it stops recording all that redundant data. It relies on established neural pathways.
It gets lazy.
It gets efficient.
Yeah.
It stops taking high-definition video of your life and starts taking blurry, low-resolution snapshots.
Low-resolution snapshots. Wow.
And because less memory data is being encoded, the brain compresses the subjective experience of time. A week becomes a blur. A year flashes by in what feels like months.
So let's unpack what this actually means for our time audits. It means that wasting time at age 40 is neurologically and experientially far more devastating than wasting time at age 20.
Absolutely.
When you are 20, a wasted weekend is a drop in a very slow-moving bucket. But by 40, 50, or 60, your subjective experience of your remaining time is already exponentially accelerating.
It's speeding up.
When I read that, I had this moment of pure awe and honestly a profound sense of terror. If time is already speeding up on its own because of biological routine, then losing a weekend to someone's petty drama at age 40 fundamentally feels like losing an entire month at age 20.
Yes.
The cost of a wasted hour is actually inflating as we age.
The inflation of time. That is a brilliant way to frame it. The cost of your prana goes up every single year you are alive, while the supply continues to dwindle.
It's a terrible economic model.
It really is. Now, it is crucial to state that the goal of understanding this somatic neurological perception of time isn't to induce a state of paralyzing panic.
Which is good, because I definitely had to talk myself down from the ledge of a panic attack when I was putting this together.
It can be overwhelming.
You start hyperventilating, thinking, oh my God, every second is a dying universe.
It can feel that way.
Yeah.
But if we connect this biological reality to the bigger picture of mindful engineering, it shouldn't cause panic.
What should it cause?
It should incite a razor-sharp, clarifying urgency. It is the ultimate forcing function.
Urgency over panic.
Right. If time is neurologically accelerating, you literally cannot afford to be passive or polite about who has access to your one-way valve.
No luxury for patience.
Exactly. You no longer have the luxury of endless patience for people who squander your life force.
Which brings us to the most frustrating, difficult question of this entire deep dive. If time is this precious, if it is an unrecoverable, neurologically accelerating one-way valve of our literal life force.
Why do we leak it?
Exactly. Why do we leak it so willingly? Why do we just leave the faucet running and let people fill up their buckets while our own well runs dry?
To answer that, we have to move from philosophy into pathology. We have to diagnose the parasitic drain.
Okay, let's diagnose it.
We need to look closely at the anatomy of a time waster. And perhaps more uncomfortably, we have to look at our own psychological complicity in letting them waste it.
We have to look in the mirror.
We do. We have to understand the mechanics of how an interaction shifts from being a mutual exchange of energy into a parasitic extraction.
I think we need to define what a time waster actually looks like because the phrase can sound, overly dramatic.
It sounds like a supervillain.
Right. It's not usually some cinematic villain who ties you to a chair in a basement so you can't leave. It is entirely mundane. The sources we're pulling from outline these subtle, normalized behaviors perfectly.
What are some examples?
Well, it's the friend who is perpetually, unapologetically late to every single dinner, which is just them signaling that their time spent getting ready is vastly more important than your time spent waiting.
It's a power dynamic.
It is. Or it's the colleague who corners you and dominates every single conversation. They treat you like a brick wall to bounce their voice off of, without offering a single breath of space for your thoughts or input.
Or it's the family member who views you entirely as a resource dispenser.
Oh, the resource dispenser.
Yeah. They never call to ask how your soul is doing. They only reach out when they need a loan, a favor, a ride to the airport.
Or 3 hours of free therapy because their life is in chaos again.
Exactly.
Or it's the person who constantly makes plans with you, forces you to block out your Saturday, and then cancels at the very last minute with a breezy text message.
With zero regard.
Zero regard for the fact that you held that unrecoverable space in your life exclusively for them. You could have been doing anything else, and they just deleted that potential from your life.
And when you are consistently subjected to those behaviors, regardless of the specific flavor of the disruption, the core internal reflection is almost always identical.
What's the reflection?
When the interaction ends, you walk away feeling profoundly, intimately used.
Used.
And it's vital you pause on that word. The psychological literature makes a crucial point here. Feeling used isn't just a petty emotion.
It's not.
No. It isn't a sign that you are being overly sensitive or selfish or keeping score in a toxic way.
Which is what we always tell ourselves. We guilt trip ourselves for feeling drained. We say, oh, I shouldn't be mad they were late. I should just be happy to see them. I'm being a bad friend.
Exactly. We gaslight our own intuition. But feeling used is actually a highly accurate, evolutionarily designed somatic diagnostic signal.
The diagnostic signal.
Yes. It is your body and your subconscious mind sounding an alarm that there is a systemic, energetic imbalance in the relationship.
Your body knows.
Your nervous system is calculating the flow of prana. It recognizes that you are providing all the capital, the attention, the patience, the time, the empathy,
and the other person is reaping all the dividends.
while offering zero return on investment. Your body knows it is being parasitized before your conscious brain is willing to admit it.
And the sociological data backing up this feeling of being used is wild. I mean,
Yep.
It is truly deeply shocking when you see the numbers.
The friendship asymmetry studies.
Yes, we all walk around with this comforting assumption that our friendships are these balanced mutual agreements. I assume you think of me the same way I think of you.
It seems logical.
But massive psychological studies on social reciprocity have indicated that up to 50% of friendships are fundamentally not mutual.
Let's repeat that so it really sinks in. 50%. Half of the social bonds you assume are reciprocal are not.
Half. The studies show that one person genuinely considers the other to be a close, trusted friend, while the other person considers them to be a mere acquaintance.
A convenience.
Right.
Yeah.
A background character in the movie of their life. This asymmetry, this massive 50% misalignment, is the exact breeding ground where that feeling of being used festers.
Because the investment levels are totally different.
Exactly. You are out here operating under the assumption of deep mutual investment. You are treating them like inner circle family. You are rearranging your schedule, lending them money, losing sleep over their problems.
And they are treating you like a convenient contact in their phone to kill time with when they are bored.
Right. That misalignment isn't a friendship. It's a parasitic drain.
And it raises an incredibly important pragmatic question. All this psychological and sociological theory is fascinating, but what does this actually look like in practice?
How does it play out?
Right. How does this parasitic drain operate day to day for a normal, highly functional, well-intentioned person? Because the people who lose the most time aren't usually weak or stupid. They are often the most capable people in the room.
That is so true. The most capable people often have the worst boundaries because they know they can handle the weight.
They just carry it.
To ground this, I want to look at a specific, deeply detailed case study from the sources that perfectly illustrates this dynamic.
Ah, the story of Elias.
Yes, let's talk about Elias. Elias is a 35-year-old systems architect. He's brilliant, he's successful, and by all accounts, Elias was beloved by absolutely everyone in his social and professional circles.
Everyone loved him.
And why was he so universally beloved? Because Elias's default, hardwired answer to any request made of him was yes.
A very dangerous, ultimately self-destructive default.
The most dangerous. Someone from a different department asks, "Hey, Elias, can I pick your brain over coffee for an hour?" Elias says yes.
Of course he does.
A guy he barely knew in college texts, "Hey man, I'm moving this weekend. Can you bring your truck and help me lift couches?" Elias says yes.
A friend calls at 11 p.m.
"Can I vent to you for 3 hours about my ex-girlfriend?"
Yes. Now, the psychology here is important. Elias didn't say yes because he was a pushover who hated himself.
Right, he wasn't doing it out of low self-esteem.
Exactly. Elias viewed this boundless availability as a badge of honor. To him, his capacity to absorb everyone else's needs was a sign of his deep empathy and his strength. He was the rock.
But rocks eventually erode under constant friction.
And that's exactly what happened. By age 35, the physical and emotional reality of this endless output caught up with him.
He hit a wall.
He didn't just get tired. He hit a wall of profound clinical burnout. He looked around and realized he hadn't read a book for his own pleasure in over a year.
Wow.
The personal software projects he wanted to build were completely stalled, untouched for months. He was perpetually exhausted.
And then there's the diagnostic signal. Right. Worst of all, and this is where the diagnostic signal comes in, he was walking around with this lingering, quiet, venomous resentment toward the very friends he was supposedly so happy to help.
And there it is. That resentment is the somatic diagnostic signal we were just dissecting.
Flashing like crazy.
It is the check engine light flashing violently on the dashboard of his life, telling him the engine is completely out of oil.
So, being a systems architect, Elias finally decides to apply his professional skills to his personal collapse. He treats his life like a failing system.
A very logical approach.
He institutes a rigorous, completely honest 30-day time audit.
And the data he got back from this audit was nothing short of horrifying.
It was bad.
Over those 30 days, he carried a notebook and tracked exactly where every single non-working hour went. He categorized all the interactions.
What did he find?
He discovered, mathematically, that he was spending upwards of 20 hours a week engaging in purely passive listening with people who never once stopped to ask him how his day was going.
20 hours.
20 hours. Never asking about his projects or his life. That is essentially a part-time job.
A 20-hour-a-week unpaid internship just leaking his trauma into the void.
It's a staggering amount of life forced to surrender. But what is truly fascinating about Elias's audit, and this is a critical realization for anyone attempting to audit their own life, is what he discovered about the nature of the people draining his time.
This is the surprising part.
When he really analyzed the data, he realized these people were not malicious. They were not evil masterminds.
Right, they weren't twirling their mustaches.
Not at all. They hadn't sat in a dark room and hatched a sinister plot to ruin Elias's life.
So why were they doing it?
They had simply learned over years of behavioral conditioning through Elias's own complete lack of boundaries that his time was a free, endlessly renewable utility.
A free utility.
They treated him exactly like tap water. You don't think about the municipal water infrastructure when you turn on the sink. You just turn the handle and the water flows and you take it for granted. Elias had made himself tap water.
That is the perfect analogy. If you never put a meter on the tap, if you never charge a toll, people will just leave the water running while they brush their teeth.
Exactly.
They don't value it because you haven't assigned it any value. And that was Elias's painful epiphany. He realized that by never setting a boundary, by never demanding reciprocity, he was entirely 100% complicit in his own depletion.
He built the very system that was crushing him.
So he decided to dismantle it. He instituted a new operational protocol for his life. He decided he would only offer his full, undivided presence to interactions that demonstrated a clear, mutual exchange of energy.
Which is the fundamental definition of mindful engineering. You assess the load and you require structural support. But we have to look at the fallout.
Because there's always fallout.
Always. Because setting boundaries of that magnitude, changing the rules of engagement with people who are used to free water is never, ever without friction.
Oh, the fallout was swift and brutal. He lost several so-called friends within a single month.
Gone just like that.
These were people who simply drifted away or actively got angry the moment he stopped doing all the heavy lifting.
The moment the tap was turned off.
Right. When he stopped initiating the text threads, when he stopped offering to drive, when he stopped being available at 11 p.m. for trauma dumping, the relationships just evaporated into thin air.
You couldn't stand on their own.
No, they didn't have the foundation.
Because the relationship was never a bridge between two people. It was a one-way pier that Elias built out over the water.
A one-way pier, exactly. But the rebirth that followed this structural collapse was incredible.
What happened?
By letting those parasitic relationships die, a massive void of space and time opened up in his life. And into that void, his actual life returned.
The prana returned.
He suddenly had the bandwidth to launch the podcast he'd been dreaming about. He started reading again. He reconnected with his core family, his parents, his sister.
Giving them the premium energy.
Yes, giving them the premium, energized version of himself rather than the exhausted leftovers. He fundamentally reclaimed his life force.
That's a huge victory.
It is. And the ultimate takeaway from Elias's story is summarized in this chilling, brilliant quote from the deep dive material. Being used often looks like being quote-unquote nice until the bill comes due.
Until the bill comes due. That is profound.
It really stuck with me.
It perfectly encapsulates the illusion of the endless one-way valve. When you are being nice without boundaries, you are just swiping a credit card. Eventually, you have to pay the emotional and physical debt.
You always have to pay.
But as effective and inspiring as Elias's audit was, as clean and mathematical as it sounds, I think we need to push back here.
Okay, let's push back.
We have to introduce some friction into this conversation. We need to critically examine the tensions and the potential dark side of this approach to mindful engineering.
I am so glad you brought this up because I definitely experienced some serious friction when I was going through the source material.
It can sound a little cold.
It sounds great on paper, but in reality, is there a dark side to being so ruthlessly, coldly analytical about human relationships? It feels like there are several heavy philosophical debates we need to have here, because human beings aren't actually plumbing systems.
No, we are messy.
Let's start with the first major tension the text brings up, the commodification of connection.
Let's steelman this counter-argument. Let's build the strongest possible case against Elias's time audit.
I will absolutely take the opposing side here, because part of me firmly believes it.
Go for it.
If I start speaking of my time purely as a currency, and I'm sitting around conducting audits, and I'm constantly demanding a perfectly balanced reciprocity ledger from my friends, aren't I polluting the inherently sacred, messy nature of human connection with corporate accounting?
It feels very transactional.
It does.
Yeah.
Isn't true spirituality, true love, and true friendship about radical generosity? It's about giving without the expectation of return.
Unconditional love.
Exactly. If I am constantly measuring whether someone is sufficiently valuing my time or if they've paid me back in equal emotional currency, I'm turning my personal life into a transactional marketplace. I'm acting like a banker of love, and that feels fundamentally gross.
There is a very valid, deeply human, and highly empathetic concern. And what is fascinating here is that we have to hold two conflicting truths simultaneously.
Okay, what are the two truths?
Radical generosity is indeed a beautiful, necessary spiritual ideal. The world desperately needs people who give without keeping score.
Right.
But, and this is the crucial distinction, maintaining a strict corporate ledger is entirely different from ensuring a baseline energetic balance. The tension is incredibly real.
Where's the line then?
Well, if you are constantly vigilant, if you are sitting at home keeping a literal tally of who texted who first, or calculating who bought coffee last, or tracking exactly how many minutes your friend spoke versus how many minutes you spoke, you are ironically wasting your own mental energy.
You become obsessed with the math.
Right. You are trapped in a prison of judgment and resentment. That is the dark side of commodification.
You become a miser. You become Ebenezer Scrooge with your time.
Exactly. Scrooge is the perfect example. However, the counter-truth is that having absolutely zero boundaries and offering radical, unquestioning generosity to a bottomless pit drains your life force entirely.
You run out of gas.
If you give everything to the parasitic drain, you are left with nothing to give to the people who truly need and deserve your radical generosity. True generosity requires a surplus of energy.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. If you are depleted, you can't be generous, you can only be a martyr. So it's not about bean counting every interaction, it's about having the situational awareness to recognize when a massive leak is threatening the structural integrity of your entire vessel.
Okay, wait, let me push back on that again. You use the term structural integrity, which sounds very logical.
Yes.
But let's take that metaphor and put it into a much messier, more painful human reality. Let's move to our second debate from the text. Grace versus rigid boundaries.
This is a tough one.
Because life isn't a spreadsheet. Here is a difficult, very common scenario. What if a close friend or a family member is in a season of deep clinical depression?
A very real scenario.
Or they're going through a brutal, life-destroying divorce.
Yeah.
Or they just lost a child. During that time, they are going to be a terrible friend.
They won't have the capacity.
They might be perpetually late. They're going to be entirely obsessively self-absorbed with their own pain. They might seem incredibly ungrateful for my help, and they're absolutely not going to offer a mutual exchange of energy.
True.
If I look at my time audit and coldly cut them off because they're currently wasting my time and ruining my structural integrity, aren't I just becoming a callous, hyper-individualistic sociopath? Don't we have an obligation to carry people when they can't walk?
This is perhaps the most vital distinction in this entire discussion, and it raises an important question about how we define time. The distinction lies in understanding the difference between a season and a system.
A season and a system.
Yes. Mindful engineering is absolutely about protecting structural integrity, yes. But in literal physical architecture, sometimes a structure must be designed to bear a massive, unequal load temporarily in order to keep the entire building from collapsing during a storm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Offering grace, offering unconditional support and unreciprocated time during someone's dark season is bearing that temporary, unequal load. It is the highest calling of friendship.
So we don't just coldly cut people off the second they start struggling or stop providing equal value.
No, absolutely not. That would strip us of our humanity and turn us into the very sociopathic bankers you warned about.
So where did the boundary come in?
The complexity and the debate lies in the gray area between offering temporary life-saving grace and enabling a permanent parasitic dynamic. Let's use your example.
The divorce example.
Right. If a friend's life explodes in a divorce, they're in crisis. For 6 months or a year, you lend them your prana, you carry the relationship, you expect nothing in return.
That's a season of grace.
Yes. But if that crisis becomes their permanent defining personality for 6 years, and they refuse to seek professional help, refuse to take agency over their life, while continuing to drain your energy every single day, that is no longer a season of grace.
The storm has passed.
The storm has passed, and they have just decided to permanently lean on your walls. That is a systemic failure, and at that point, your boundaries must be reestablished or your house will collapse alongside theirs.
That distinction between a season and a system is incredibly clarifying. It saves us from becoming robots, but it also protects us from becoming permanent victims of someone else's dysfunction.
Exactly. A season has an end. A system sustains itself endlessly.
Right. But let's turn the mirror around for our third and final debate in this section. We call this the mirror of accountability, because it is very easy for us to sit here and talk about other people.
Oh, it is always easier to cast ourselves as the noble martyrs whose precious time and brilliant energy is being tragically squandered by thoughtless parasitic users. It feels good to be the victim.
It feels incredibly comfortable to be the victim. But a truly mindful inquiry demands we look in the mirror. I have to confess this to you and to everyone listening because the hypocrisy is real. I am guilty of being the time waster.
We all are at times.
If I am honest with myself, how often am I the one who is not valuing someone else's time? Let's talk about the concept of phubbing, phone snubbing.
A classic modern sin.
If my partner is sitting across from me at dinner, genuinely trying to talk to me about a hard day they had, and I'm casually scrolling through social media, giving them half-hearted uh-huhs while I read a tweet, I am actively devaluing their time.
You are stealing your prana.
I am. I am making them pour their energy into a wall. Or how about when I show up 10 minutes late to a meeting? Not because there was an emergency, but simply because I prioritized my own comfort in the morning.
You wanted the extra sleep.
Because I wanted that extra cup of coffee, or I hit snooze one too many times. I have unilaterally decided that my comfort is worth more than the 10 minutes the other person spent sitting alone in a room waiting for me.
And that realization is the brutal, ego-destroying self-assessment that any genuine philosophy of time demands.
It hurts to admit.
It does. But before we can aggressively demand presence from others or rightly cut out people who don't value our time, we have to endure the uncomfortable process of ensuring we aren't shredding someone else's life force.
We have to hold ourselves to the standard.
You cannot demand a standard of mindful presence that you are entirely unwilling to provide. If you want to protect your one-way valve, you must treat other people's valves with identical reverence.
It's a tough pill to swallow, realizing you might be the energy vampire in someone else's story, but it is absolutely necessary for any real growth.
It's the only way to be honest.
Now, stepping back from the intense personal accountability of all this, I want to widen the scope. I want to look at why this feeling of time poverty, this sense of being constantly drained, feels so uniquely, oppressively overwhelming today.
It feels worse now than ever.
Why are we all so universally burnt out right now, compared to 50 or 100 years ago? The research expanded the lens to look at human history, biology, and sociology, and here is where it gets really interesting.
To understand our modern burnout, we actually have to look backward. We have to look at the historical invention of the very concept of wasting time.
Yes, this was the historical bombshell that completely reframed my understanding of stress.
It changes everything.
The research points out that before the widespread adoption of the mechanical clock in European towns around the 14th century, the concept of wasting time, or having someone steal your time, practically did not exist in the human consciousness.
It represents an incredible, violent shift in human psychology. We have to put ourselves in that medieval mindset.
What was it like?
Before the mechanical clock, before the town bell started ringing every hour to regulate labor, time was measured organically. It was measured by the seasons, by the transit of the sun, by the completion of necessary tasks.
So tied to nature.
Right. You woke up when the sun rose. You milked the cows when they needed milking. You harvested the wheat when it was golden. Time was a fluid environmental reality.
Not a grid.
Exactly. You couldn't waste a minute because minutes didn't functionally exist in the minds of everyday people.
Yeah.
There was no concept of an hour being a container that you had to fill with productive labor.
I am just marveling at that reality.
Yeah.
You couldn't be late to milk a cow by 5 minutes. The anxiety didn't exist.
It wasn't possible.
Which means that our modern, heart-palpitating anxiety of having our time stolen by someone is largely an industrial, socially engineered reality. It is an artificial construct, not an inherent biological one.
It is entirely learned.
We were aggressively trained by the Industrial Revolution and the advent of factory wage labor to view time as a literal currency. When people started getting paid by the hour, an hour became a coin in your purse.
Time is money.
Time became punch cards and billable increments. And if time is money, then someone talking to you for too long is literally picking your pocket.
Precisely. The mechanical clock synchronized human labor, which created immense technological progress, but it fundamentally fractured our relationship with existence.
It made us neurotic.
It turned time into a commodity to be hoarded, traded, and stolen. And if the industrial age turned time into money, the digital age has hyper-accelerated that commodification to the point of absurdity.
Oh, absolutely.
This brings us to a modern sociological phenomenon that sociologists have termed time confetti.
Time confetti. Just the phrase alone paints such a vivid, frustrating picture in my mind.
It's the perfect descriptor for our current cognitive state. Time confetti refers to how our potentially vast, usable blocks of time are currently being broken into tiny, fractured, utterly unusable fragments by constant digital interruptions.
Okay, give us an example of how that works.
Let's say you have 2 hours blocked off on a Saturday to engage in deep, meaningful work, or just to read a book and recover your prana.
A nice, solid 2 hours.
But during those 2 hours, you allow people who do not respect your boundaries to interrupt you. You get a text message about weekend plans. 5 minutes later, an email notification pops up. Then a Slack message demanding an immediate response to a non-urgent question.
And every single one of those notifications triggers a little hit of cortisol, pulling your brain out of its flow state.
Exactly. And neuroscientists have shown that after a digital interruption, it takes the human brain an average of 23 minutes to fully return to a state of deep cognitive focus.
23 minutes just to recover from one text.
So if you are interrupted every 15 minutes, you never actually achieve focus. They are literally shredding your 2 hours of time into thousands of pieces of confetti.
And you cannot build anything meaningful out of confetti. You can't achieve deep, mindful focus. You can't have a truly profound conversation. You can't even deeply relax when your attention is being sliced into 2-minute increments.
It destroys your cognitive flow.
It completely destroys it. You feel like you've been busy all day, but you've accomplished absolutely nothing but sweeping up confetti.
Which brings us to another fascinating limitation of human biology that intersects with this digital barrage. It's a sociological and anthropological limit known as Dunbar's number.
Right. Robin Dunbar was an evolutionary anthropologist who studied primate brain sizes and social groups.
A very famous study.
And he established that human beings have a hardwired biological cognitive limit to the number of stable social relationships we can actively maintain.
And what is that number?
That limit is generally accepted to be about 150 people. Your brain, physically, anatomically, does not have the neocortex processing power to deeply care about or track the emotional states of more than 150 individuals.
It is a hardware limitation. You cannot out-hustle your neocortex.
You can't. But the critical, devastating part of Dunbar's research isn't just the 150 limit. It's the layers within that number.
The inner circles.
Within that 150, we only have the cognitive capacity for an absolute inner circle of about 5 people. Just 5.
5 people.
5 people who get the absolute best of our empathy, our time, and our love.
Now, if we connect this biological limitation to the bigger picture of time allocation and time confetti, giving your time to peripheral energy vampires, people who are barely on the fringe of your 150 limit, doesn't just waste a few hours of your Tuesday.
No, it is a direct act of theft against the people you love most. It actively robs your inner circle of your cognitive bandwidth.
Think about the mechanics of that.
Think about it. If you spend all day at work letting a toxic colleague shred your time into confetti, and then you spend your commute home answering texts from someone who treats you like a free therapist, your neocortex is fried.
Absolutely depleted.
By the time you walk through your own front door, your partner, your kids, your absolute best friends, those 5 people who actually deserve your prana, who do they get?
The leftovers.
They get the exhausted, irritable, depleted husk of you. They get the leftovers. Because you spent your premium biological bandwidth on a person who considers you a mere acquaintance. Misallocating your time directly degrades the quality of your most important life-sustaining relationships.
This is exactly why the time audit we discussed with Elias is not a selfish act. People feel guilty setting boundaries because they think it's selfish.
I feel guilty all the time.
But by ruthlessly protecting your time from the outer perimeter, by locking the gate against the parasitic drains, you are radically, fiercely investing in your inner circle. Boundary setting is an act of profound love for the 5 people who matter most.
That is such a powerful reframe. Setting a boundary with a time waster isn't an attack on them. It is a defense of your family.
Exactly.
Okay, we have covered the metaphysics of Kayla, the history of the mechanical clock, the sociology of confetti, the biology of Dunbar's number. But I want to move back from the academic to the deeply, universally personal.
The human element.
Because all of this isn't just an interesting theory to discuss in a deep dive. We are all, every single one of us, moving at the exact same speed toward the ultimate forcing function, terminal clarity.
The inescapable finality of our time, the moment the one-way valve snaps shut for the last time.
The moment it snaps shut. The research we reviewed included this incredibly solemn, deeply moving account from a palliative care nurse.
Yes, this part was devastating.
She spent years sitting beside the beds of the dying, and she documented the most common regrets people articulated in their final weeks. And embedded in her findings was a specific story about a hospice patient named Sarah.
Sarah's story.
Sarah was a woman who had spent decades, essentially her entire adult life, trying to win the approval and maintain the social grace of a highly critical, emotionally distant, and ultimately parasitic social circle.
A circle of people who demanded her time but never valued her presence. She attended endless events she internally hated.
Just going through the motions.
She spent weeks preparing and hosting elaborate dinners for people she knew for a fact gossiped about her the moment they left her house.
Exactly. She poured her vital energy, her prana, the unrenewable hours of her healthy years, into proving her worth to people who fundamentally did not and could not value her.
And then came the end.
And in her final weeks, confined to a bed, looking out her hospice window at the world going on without her, Sarah had a profound realization.
And what is truly profound and deeply sad about Sarah's final realization is that it wasn't characterized by anger.
She wasn't angry.
No, she wasn't raging at these fake friends for treating her poorly. She didn't blame them. The emotion she expressed was a devastating, crushing sorrow at her own choices.
The accountability.
She realized that the cosmic clock, Kala, had kept ticking relentlessly through every single miserable dinner party. It ticked through every anxious phone call she answered out of obligation.
Devouring the time.
It ticked away her youth and her vitality while she attempted to be seen by people whose eyes were permanently closed to her.
I wanted to deliver Sarah's exact words here because this quote stopped me dead in my tracks. This is the anchor quote for this entire deep dive.
It's a powerful one.
Looking back at a lifetime of leaked energy, Sarah said, "I spent my only life paying attention to people who were looking the other way."
I spent my only life paying attention to people who were looking the other way. That is the physics of tragedy. Time waits for no one, stripped of all its cliché, made heartbreakingly real.
It is the ultimate tragedy of the one-way valve. The universe offers absolutely no refunds.
None.
You cannot go to the manager of the universe on your deathbed and say, "I spent those years on the wrong people. I would like my 30 years back so I can spend them on my kids." The transaction is final.
The clock does not pause for your hesitation. It does not freeze in place while you endlessly, anxiously debate whether you should finally leave a toxic dynamic or whether you should send that text establishing a boundary.
It doesn't care about your debates.
The gears of Kala just keep turning, grinding the present into the past. The realization that you are being consumed, that your prana is being wasted on people looking the other way, has to happen now.
Right now.
It has to happen in the present, today, while you still have the agency and the health to stand up and walk away. Terminal clarity is useless if it arrives when you are terminal. You need terminal clarity right now, in the middle of your life.
We have to bring all this heavy philosophy, these profound historical shifts, and this devastating terminal clarity down to the absolute ground.
Practical application.
We need actionable, physical steps so that the person listening to this doesn't end up looking out a window 20 years from now, echoing Sarah's regrets. Let's trade off detailing the practical integrations from the deep dive. How do we actually do this on a random Tuesday?
There are 4 highly specific, actionable takeaways.
Okay, there are 4 highly specific, actionable takeaways to institute immediately. Why don't you take the first one?
I will start with the first, which is foundational. The resonance versus dissonance check. You cannot change a system you haven't measured.
Like Elias's audit?
Exactly like Elias gathered in his audit. Your homework is to track your next 5 significant social interactions. After each one concludes, take a physical notebook, sit down, and write out exactly how your body feels.
The somatic signal.
Yes. Do you feel energetically lighter, inspired, or grounded? That is resonance. That is a mutual exchange of prana. Or do you feel physically heavier, irritated, drained, and anxious?
That's dissonance.
That is dissonance. That is the somatic diagnostic signal of a parasitic drain. Map this data rigorously over a week. It will strip away your emotional biases and clearly show you exactly who is valuing the exchange and who is simply consuming your time as a free utility.
I love that. Rely on the data of your own body. The second actionable takeaway is what the psychological researchers call the power of the pause.
The circuit breaker.
This is essentially a behavioral circuit breaker designed for people who, like Elias, have a dangerous default setting of yes. Your goal is to eliminate the immediate yes from your vocabulary entirely. Completely remove it.
Just stop saying it.
Institute a mandatory, non-negotiable 24-hour waiting period for any new commitment, request, or favor.
Yeah.
If someone texts you, "Hey, can you help me with this project this weekend?" you do not say yes. You have a script ready. You say, "Let me check my calendar tonight and I'll get back to you tomorrow."
That is a brilliant intervention because it completely removes the social and atmospheric pressure of the immediate moment. You aren't saying no, which triggers the fear of conflict.
Yep.
You are just claiming space.
Exactly. It gives you the oxygen and the distance to actually consult your data. You get to evaluate, does this person truly value the time they are asking for? Is this a season of grace where I need to step up, or are they just treating me like a 24/7 convenience store? It puts a toll booth on the one-way valve.
A coal booth, yes. The third takeaway directly addresses the terror most people feel about confrontation. We call this demote, don't destroy.
Demote, don't destroy.
A lot of people fail at time audits because they think setting boundaries means they have to have a dramatic, tear-filled confrontation and formally fire their friends.
Which is terrifying.
You don't always have to dramatically burn bridges with people who don't value your time. You don't need a huge theatrical exit or a screaming match. Instead, practice mindful demotion.
Mindful demotion. How does that work?
Refer back to Dunbar's number. Move them from the inner circle of your cognitive bandwidth to the outer perimeter. How do you do this practically? Start initiating the text threads. Stop offering unsolicited advice. Stop over-delivering on favors they didn't explicitly earn. Just let your output naturally match their level of effort.
Yeah, it's their effort.
Role play this in your head. If they text you a chaotic paragraph about their drama, you don't respond with 3 paragraphs of deep analysis. You respond the next day with, wow, that sounds really tough, hope it works out, and you leave it there.
And if they leave?
If they fade away because you stopped supplying all the energy, they were never truly a structural part of your life anyway. You didn't destroy the relationship, you just stopped artificially inflating it.
Wow, that sounds really tough. Hope it works out. I'm literally writing that down. That is a protective shield for your prana.
It's very effective.
And that brings us to the fourth and final takeaway, which is to internalize finality. You need to create a daily physical reminder in your environment of everything we've talked about today.
The memento mori.
Right. The human brain is prone to forgetting the big picture when it gets caught up in the confetti of the day.
Yeah.
So anchor it. It could be wearing a mechanical watch that audibly ticks, reminding you of Tempest Fugit.
Or an hourglass.
It could be putting a small physical hourglass on your office desk.
Yeah.
Or setting a specific labeled alarm on your phone for 3 p.m. every day. When you look at that object or hear that alarm, let it serve as a psychological prompt. Stop whatever you are doing, take a breath, and ask yourself a brutally honest question.
What's the question?
This hour of my life is currently passing through the one-way valve, and it will never, ever return. Am I giving it to someone or something worthy of my existence?
It grounds the vastness, the terrifying infinity of cosmic time into an immediate, hyper-actionable choice that you have complete control over.
It really does. It puts your hands back on the steering wheel of your own life. And to you, listening to this right now, as you drive your car or walk your dog or sit at your desk, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day, as the literal clock continues to tick down.
The final provocation.
If you do this work, if you successfully institute these boundaries and you utilize the power of the pause, if you filter out the noise of the energy vampires and you finally structurally reclaim your prana, what is that sudden massive silence going to feel like? Are we sometimes allowing people to waste our precious time simply because we are deeply existentially terrified of the empty space we would be forced to face and the person we would be forced to meet if they were suddenly gone?